eventually at some point, I think I just said, I want to do this for myself. I mean, being a CEO is terrifying, right? Because it's all you. The buck stops with you. But at the same time, it's just such a huge opportunity because you feel like you can deliver exactly what you're trying to do.
Hello and welcome to Business Underdog, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories for the aspiring entrepreneur. I'm your host, Eric Remer, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this exciting journey. And today's episode, you're going to learn as much as I learned from an amazing CEO, Daniel Rosenberg, who has built out Compass Pain and Wellness, now multiple locations, and is going to continue to expand it. What's so cool about what Daniel has created is he's the entrepreneur that came from the outside. He didn't understand anything to do with healthcare. And then little by little, just by pressing on things and learning more and more and more, found opportunities that not only helped patient care, but really helped his business continue to kind of grow and scale. We're going to learn lessons of, leadership and culture, challenges that, he had to overcome, and ultimately where he is with this business within a healthcare marketplace that is constantly being disrupted and how he's going to ultimately grow it. So you're going to definitely enjoy this episode. Listen all the way through because we have some good conversations towards the end, and please enjoy. Well, welcome to Business Underdog. I'm your host, Eric Remer, and today I have a guest, Daniel Rosenberg, who's CEO of Compass Pain and Wellness, and super excited to talk to Daniel today. I'm just getting to know him, but I've learned about his story, and I think it's really three main things I'm super excited to get across. Number one, how Daniel has reimagined healthcare, really focused on empathy and innovation within the area that he's focused on. Secondly, Daniel had no background in healthcare and how he went from kind of really being an outsider to creating a cutting edge, wellness center that is helping hundreds and thousands of patients and has a chance to expand even further. And then lastly, learn from all of the insights and lessons that Daniel's had, specifically on leadership, patient advocacy, and some of the entrepreneurial kind of just lessons that he's learned that will benefit to myself and everybody else. So with that, welcome, Daniel.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. Somewhat aspirational introduction, but I hope I live up to all those things with Compass.
No, you have, and as you and I talked about prior, this is why I started Business Underdog, to talk to people like you that are doing really cool stuff, that are making really, real valuable contributions to their communities, the people they're serving. And so I feel very fortunate to have you on today. And I think to kick it off, it'd be really awesome to get your story, the background of why you did what you did, why you even created Compass. And just some of the inspiration behind it would be a great way to kick this off.
Yeah. I love this podcast. I listened to a bunch of episodes before we, when you invited me on, wanted to get the background and everything. And I love the framework. And right before we started, you said something great, which was, people should listen to podcasts whether they're running, a multi-million-dollar company with all these employees and locations, or whether they're a plumber with 2 trucks. And my first, business, real business I tried to run was a carpet cleaning company. And we got up to 2 trucks, and I thought, this is unbelievable. And I wish I had something like this to listen to, candidly, because there wasn't a lot of relatable advice, and I was winging it, and I for sure made a lot more mistakes than successes.
That's awesome.
So this has gone better than that. But we did well. We cleaned some carpets. But yeah, I always say I'm the black sheep of my family that didn't go to med school. My father was a pain physician. My mother was a nurse. My stepmom was a pain psychologist. And I said, this seems like a lot of work. I don't know that I'm going to do that. Do the carpet cleaning thing, went to business school, did some startups and early stage finance stuff. But of course, I just found my way back into the healthcare space. And I think there's probably a natural gravitation there because even from an administrative, angle or as an administrator, I still feel like I'm making a difference in somebody's life. And I get kind of the feeling of helping somebody by creating a system that maybe allows other people to help them. Like I'm a conduit to it. And I really value that. And I think that probably does come from, just personal experiences where I think everyone is, if not themselves, 1 degree separated from a healthcare horror story where somebody didn't get the care they needed. Maybe in many cases, I think there's an innovative or sometimes non-innovative treatment that exists out there that, they don't know about because no one ever showed them the path to get to that. And it's just such a devastating thing to be so close to relief and not acquire it because the system
Yeah.
is just letting you down.
W-
And I
Was there a
want to solve
moment?
that. Mhm.
Was there a specific moment that you're like, I got to do this? Like to your point, you were either, directly or indirectly saw, healthcare not serving the needs of somebody you cared about. Was there a defining moment, or was it just a kind of a continuation of things you were seeing in the marketplace?
I think I got begrudgingly dragged into healthcare originally, and then it kind of built as I was building my career and working at this company in California as we grew more and more locations. It just started to become a real thing where I was connected to it, and every kind of inefficiency or failure or opportunity, let's say, of the company to do better became more and more personal. And eventually, at some point, yeah, I think I just said, I want to do this for myself. I mean, being a CEO and kind of doing it is terrifying, right? Because it's all you. The buck stops with
Yeah,
you, but at the same time,
totally.
it's just such a huge opportunity because you feel like you can deliver exactly what you're trying to do.
On that, how is your kind of your personal experience kind of, shaped your philosophy on delivering care for your patients?
I think it's probably a cliche adage, but it's like treat every person that walks through the door like they are your mother, brother, sister, best friend, whatever it is. And I just think if you lead with patient care, if that's the primary focus, and you just every conversation you have with clinicians, with staff, with your billing team, everything is like put yourself in their shoes. Again, treat them like
Sure.
that. It just, I think, creates that culture. And in my experience, everything related to the fundamentals of the business that's going to show up on the P&L and L and the balance sheet will flow from that. So it's
Well,
easy to have a North Star.
imagine that. And it's obviously so relevant in healthcare, but it's truly relevant in any business you're doing, right? If you're treating the customers as if they're like family members, and you're treating them with kind of the love and care that you would want to be treated with, I think people are going to enjoy the experience. I mean, you think about healthcare, which is so personal. Um, it's almost like if you step back and be like, well, of course, why isn't that the norm? Why isn't that the norm of what's being done? I grew up, my father's a physician as well. He's kind of a general practitioner, and I would hear his stories for years of people that would come in and, that the connectivity, and he had a very similar philosophy that you had. Probably didn't take it to the level that you've taken that. So I'd love to hear more about how, when you created Compass, that you're challenging some of the conventional kind of delivery of medical care.
It feels like you could pick any single, part of the American healthcare system and talk for 10 hours about how broken it is, right? I think patients are lost in a mix of insurance and the bureaucratic elements that creates, and then the way that practices respond to that red tape inefficiently. So it just creates, from our perspective, we named the company Compass because we want to guide people through barriers, guide people to the right treatment that exists for them, and kind of offer that emotional path that leads them to where, ultimately they're going to get the best care, the most relief. Um, and I think that innovation we have to challenge every level of the system, right? So, can we offer non-insurance based treatments at a reasonable price that allows patients to access them, and just circumnavigate insurance entirely as much as that's possible? I think that that's very much the future of healthcare. Um, but also, is there ways for us to build efficiency within our own systems so that we challenge the insurance company model and make them behave more efficiently and uphold their end of the bargain so that patients can ultimately get care? If our contract with an insurer says that they have 5 days to authorize a treatment and we know that they take 60 days on average, that's unacceptable for the patient. So we
Yeah,
have to find, whatever the fine print is in the agreement that allows the patient to access an MRI more quickly because of the carrier's failure to respond. That's better
that's really
care for the
interesting.
patient. It's really honestly better for the carrier because we know the patient's going to get treated faster, ultimately utilize less of their resources, be a happier customer to them. But if you don't kind of do that work and you just allow the system to weigh you down, you end up providing bad service to everyone and having a bad business.
I've been through my own kind of physical journey, and when I was learning about your organization, I saw all the different modalities that you guys work with. I'd love to understand kind of the multi-disciplinary, multi-modality kind of mindset of even Eastern, Western kind of, mindsets of how you heal pain and how you bring those together in a way that the patient's getting the best care possible, where it's not one size fits all, but the variety of different things that could actually create the right solution and how you bring those all together.
Yeah, pain is a fascinating space. I think it's the most inherently, well, I mean, your father's a general practitioner, right? So you had to have a lot of
Yeah.
tools in the bag. And I think
Yeah.
pain is in that same element, right? Where it's inherently, the standard of care is inherently multimodal because pain exists in a physical, but also a mental space. It exists in a social space. They say it's a biopsychosocial construct. And so you have to be able to address all of these things. And even within the physical realm, it has to be multidisciplinary. So I remember I had this weird pain in my hip. Like every time I squat, I just had this weird, like, what is that? And I'm standing in our office and I've got 3 physical therapists and an acupuncturist and 4 of the best interventional pain docs. And everyone's poking my hip and they all have a different idea, right? And eventually I wound up in a buddy's office who's a chiropractor and he's like, lay on the table, pulls my legs. And he's like, dude, one of your legs is like a 1/4 inch shorter than the other one. Your SI joint's like out of place. And he just pops it in, right? And I stand up, squat, completely gone. And
Interesting.
it's not an advertisement for chiropractic care, like it's the end all be all. But when you have a chiropractic issue, someone who sees the human body as an intersection of joint spaces, right, and a skeletal system, that's who you need to see because that's how they see the world. And similarly, if you have a nervous system problem and you need a interventional pain procedure or a surgery or whatever it is, you kind of need to have the best of the best looking at it from their particular vantage point so that you're able to address and really discover like the root cause of the problem. And rarely, if ever, one person is going to contain all those perspectives.
And it's such a, I'm thinking about, you're talking about how I'm thinking about that patient who's in pain, who's not you, who doesn't have 6 people around them, poking them, prodding them. How do they navigate that journey? Because, great example, they go, great, I'm going to a pain interventionist and he or she says, this is what you do. And the acupuncturist said, no, this is what you're going to ultimately do. And you had enough understanding of the overall marketplace to filter through and find the chiropractor to actually, solve your particular problem. How does somebody without the background and the resources that are around them find that path for themselves to alleviate that pain?
I think most of the time they don't. And that's really the problem we want to solve. And yeah, I've had the feeling, I mean, I know some qualified medical examiner physicians. These are just like, I don't know what quality other than thoughtfulness. I think that's the most important quality, right? Someone who's up to date on all the literature, but they also know how to really listen to you and take in all that information and compare it to the vast knowledge that they have, and then think about your situation and be innovative and come up with something. And I just think that that's the rarest quality and people rarely get access to it. And I've constantly felt like if I could, I have friends and they'll say, oh, my shoulder, this, the doctor said this. I'm like, hold on, let's FaceTime this doctor I know, right? And we get on and suddenly they have a total different differential diagnosis and
Right.
they go down a different path and it cures them. And that's what creates that burning desire to say, okay,
Yeah.
if I could FaceTime every person, I feel like I could get them the best care through the
That's awesome.
contacts in my phone book. All right, well, how do I make a company that just does that for
Yeah.
everybody that comes through the door?
We hadn't really talked about this prior, but I would love to know if at all, how you think of utilizing AI to kind of solve some of those problems. Is AI part of Compass's future and integrated into any of the kind of modalities or some of the treatment planning that may exist?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. AI is something that I mean, it comes up in every meeting, basically. Every day, every meeting, AI is a focus. I don't know, it's just continuing to solve more problems in a better way. I don't think it's there to be fully leveraged yet, but it's obviously what's going to be the game changer. And primarily, I view it as an administrative tool, right? Like physicians want to make eye contact and talk to you for an hour in the consult, but then they have to go home and chart that note for an hour in order
Yeah.
to get reimbursed by the insurance company. Well, if AI can take that off their plate, they can now see another patient in that hour.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we do a lot of workers' compensation, people who are hurt at work. Every single patient visit that we have generates 5.5 additional incoming requests from fax, physical mail. The mailman comes and
Interesting.
gives us a letter. It's so burdensome. And it's designed, I think, to be intentionally burdensome to force people to not want to treat the patients, right?
Yes.
But if you had an AI that could alleviate that, your overhead would go down and you could invest significantly more in patient care and see more patients.
You know, just getting to know you, incredibly thoughtful, how you're building your business, focused on the patient. And you're also incredibly focused on building a great company culture. I'd love to learn some of your leadership lessons that you've learned in building out your culture, building out your team, because it's awesome. I hear this from entrepreneurs all the time. You care so much. You had this journey with pain management within your family. How do you bring that throughout your organization? Instill that that same level of care between not just you, but you can't touch everybody, as we both know, as you build your organization, throughout your organization. So each of those patients are having that same type of experience as if they were talking directly to you.
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel very fortunate for two reasons. One, to be in healthcare, where I think the mission does resonate with people. Like, people move into healthcare as a career because they have that empathy internally and they want to help people. And so as long as we can nurture that and not burn them out and drive them away from it, I think it's there to start with. And then I feel very fortunate to have just incredible mentor in my career who really led. I'd never really experienced it before, but he just led this blameless culture where there'd be a serious issue, like a very bad problem that someone created, and we would get in a meeting and everybody kind of knew, like, that person made a very bad mistake, but we all cared about them. Like, we know they're trying really. And he would just
Yeah.
start the meeting completely problem focused, never highlight that person. Never, there's just no reason to, because
Right.
everybody's on the same page, trying to row in the same direction. And I found that to be revolutionary. And really, I mean, people always say, like, fail fast, fail often. And it's like, that's great. It's totally true. But you get that outcome so much more. People will take the big swings if they know it's safe to do it and they're not going to get friendly fire from their own team.
And within that, I'm sure fail fast, fail often is a great philosophy, but it does mean you're failing along the way. So what are some of the challenges that you had to face to get to where you are today? What are some of the biggest things that you've had to overcome to kind of create the stability where you now, we'll talk about in a second, where you want to take this organization? I'd love to hear about that.
I feel like I'm constantly creating sunk cost and then abandoning it. And that's the failure. So
Yeah.
as an example, we found this tech company that, had these ideas about integrating with insurance portals and basically making the authorization process significantly easier. And this is probably the most burdensome area of like treating patients who have insurance, is just trying to get the insurance to tell you you're allowed to do whatever treatment you need to do for them. And it's just enormously expensive and it takes forever and it's all this friction. And so we invested all this time, and I built this proprietary software application that would link with this other software, and the whole thing just completely didn't work. It just, like, we spent months of doing it, and it was like, oh, this is just no better than a human sitting and processing on the phone trying to do these authorizations. And I could feel internally my tendency was like, well, we have to keep it though, right? Because I just spent so much time building it. And it's like, no, it failed. It didn't work. It was a great idea. I would do it again 10 times out of 10 with what I knew then. But okay, literally just delete all the code and just
And
move it.
start over.
Start
Well,
over.
it's funny, and you have to deal with it as a small business owner. That comes out of your pocket, your profits, and when you make those mistakes, it can be really painful. I'll give you kind of a parallel in my world where, we're trying things every single day. Every single day, how do we provide more value to our customer? What tools are our customers going to want? What do we make? What do we utilize to it? What do we invest? Utilize the resources we have to invest to create the most value. So I always kind of joke, we'll go to a board meeting, and I have a great board of directors, and they're very well intentioned. And they'll be like, okay, break down all your investments, show me the ROI in all those investments and why you're going to do them. And we do it, we do the kind of background, and we think, just like you had an amazing ROI on that product that didn't work, the reality is we don't freaking know. Like you don't know, which is why you're doing it in the first place. And it often takes those chances. You failed on that one. We haven't talked about things that have succeeded yet, but you have to do one, two, three, four things where actually if you look back and get a perfect vision of the past, you say, yeah, those four things were a complete waste of time and energy. But I had to do those four things to find the fifth thing, right? And so it's never one-to-one. It's always those trying to do those things that are going to really move the needle. You don't always know which one those are going to be. So it's like I said, we talked about it in the intro. It doesn't matter if you're running your business or my business. It's the same type of challenges that all entrepreneurs have as they're trying to grow their business. So I appreciate the story. So tell me one of those. On the positive side, what are one of those things that you took a big swing and said, you know what, I think this is going to actually move the needle, and you invested time, money, resources, and you saw it come to the other side in a real positive way.
Yeah, it's those are harder to think of. No, I think the
But
biggest one
it's
is
funny you say that because it's never one big swing. It's those little things that happen you're doing every day that you look back and be like, oh shit, we really created something really cool here. So the fouls are easy because they're one big swings you missed, right? That most of the successes are those little incremental movements versus those big swings. So if you don't have them, that's still like, well, just if you had a big project that worked out really well.
no, yeah, I can think of some. I think one of the biggest things is being outcome driven from a data standpoint. So a lot of medical guidelines are based on objective information about patient improvement, right? And we figured out a way to really track this because that can be difficult to demonstrate as a physician. You're having as a patient, you're coming in, you're talking to your doctor, and hey, I'm getting so much better. We should keep doing this treatment. You're like, of course, right? But the insurance company, that's not good enough for them. They need an objective outcome measure. And so figuring out systems to directly allow patients to communicate how they're getting better and in what specific ways. And so we created an application that kind of messages patients based on their individual diagnosis and gives them these standardized assessments so that they're able to say, here's how I'm doing with activities of daily living. And these are all clinically validated. So the score that the patient generates based on their unique responses is actually a objective measure. It's not a subjective assessment of how they're feeling or how they think they're improving. And those objective measures then just flow directly into the visit note, and the provider was able to input them at the click of a box, and then it would go with the authorization to the insurance carrier.
That's really cool.
And it just skyrocketed our authorizations and our ability to get patients the care they needed. And we would just bring them into the fold, right? Hey, don't forget to take your assessment every month because it's really going to help us get you the care that you want.
That's awesome. No, that's a great example of that. Speaking of patients and patient care, which how do you balance? You're running a business, a for-profit business that you're trying to make money and support your family. On the flip side, you went into this to truly provide amazing care for patients. How do you balance running that business, generating kind of the growth and the profits you need to continue to be successful, but also keeping care accessible to people that might have less financial resources than other people?
It's a big challenge. And it's a big challenge, again, where an insurance carrier might make a decision like, hey, we're just going to cut physical therapy rates by 50%. And we have 300 patients from that carrier who are currently in the middle of physical therapy. And you've suddenly just changed the game where this is not profitable. It's not even break even. You lose money every single time you see one of these patients. And sometimes you eat it because it's the right thing to do to care for the patient, and I just won't accept the role of that being put in that position. But you have to innovate around it and, create financial hardships, create other opportunities to collect from that insurance carrier. We're venturing into the path of functional medicine, which is, all the cool Andrew Huberman biohack, right? And it's a great world. I find it really interesting, but I think it's also highly inaccessible to most people.
Totally.
And I don't like that. And, I think we're still in the design stage, but I think we're going to have a scholarship program where for every,
really cool.
X number of applicants or X number of patients we accept, 10% or something is always maintained as a free program. And that's not amazing, but I think just at least putting the flag in the ground and saying, look, like this can't be an ivory tower of healthcare.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and if you think about like I go to a functional, doctor as a just like you provide some concierge services, he provides some concierge services. And to your point, it's not accessible. I have, he's given me, you know, peptides and shots, and I'm doing all these things that are very preventative, which if you think about the cost of the healthcare system, my focus, I'm now in my early 50s. I want to stay the heck away from the healthcare system, right? I want to do all the things I could do physically, both that from food to, movements to ultimately working with functional medical doctors that are giving me things that are going to keep me away. And if you think about the cost on our system, if those modalities that actually get proven scientifically that actually work, not just the stuff that I think are really cool, get pushed down through the system, not only should it be accessible that everyone has better health care, but it should be less costs on the system because the more preventative, the less, chronic diseases that people are dealing with, which, in the industry is weighs down the industry massively. It's those chronic diseases that probably could have been caught and or, mediated at some level prior to getting to that place where it becomes very expensive on the medical system. So yeah, I'm well aware of that world. And do you see that, as you look at kind of the future of where you're going, what are some of the biggest opportunities? Is it creating better systems within your ecosystem to bring that functional medicine down? Is it, expanding the clinics in different directions? I'd love to see kind of, from your perspective, what are the biggest opportunities within the healthcare ecosystem, not even specifically with Compass, just what you see in the healthcare ecosystem that are going to be really big breakthroughs going forward?
Yeah, I think you've hit a lot of the nails on the head in this conversation. I think AI is going to be massively disruptive to cost, which should bring care down. I don't know if insurance companies will get better at actuarial science, which it seems like they're just not very skilled at this, because it feels like if I ran a healthcare insurance company, I would immediately send like a diet and exercise counselor to every one of my members, right? So that
Right.
they would use less of my resources down the line, but they don't seem particularly interested in that kind of stuff. Um, I think that overall as a system, I'd like to see it move more to that concierge model. And I think that that's where it's going. I think retail health, as it's called, is one of the fastest growing segments. I think you look at things like, LASIK surgery or elective surgeries, and they get better, faster, cheaper year over year. And things that stay stuck with a middle person as the payer, like an insurance agent or a network, can get more expensive or just seem arbitrarily costed. And I think there's just a huge opportunity there for patients to start feeling a little more empowered, like consumers, and having options and, yeah, having direct access to care and being more emboldened, less prescriptive. We touched on that earlier with the clinical care, but I think part of that relates to if you just go in and this is the doctor they told me to go see, and this person's going to have the same opinion as everyone else, and I'm going to follow whatever is said, that's less empowered as a consumer. You would never behave that way trying to buy a TV or a car, right?
Right.
You
Right.
understand the nature of the relationship, and that's not really different in healthcare, maybe for better or for worse, but I'd like to lean into the better aspects of it.
Yeah. Well, one of the real benefits you get with the direct pay, you're actually paying for the care you're receiving, so you care more about it. I mean, if you think about part of that issue with the healthcare system in general is, I don't know the percentage, but my guess is it's a very, very large percentage of healthcare being paid by people who aren't receiving the healthcare, right? Companies are the biggest private provider of healthcare. Corporations, the biggest provider of healthcare in this country. So we pay for healthcare costs, but the people who are receiving the treatment aren't making the checks out to those organizations. So when you have that disconnect, you know, the incentives are so misaligned, and nobody wins. Well, some people might win, but the ultimate patient, and honestly, as you know, with your family, the doctors don't win either. They don't like the system. They don't like being, when my dad, who's older now, he finally retired. At the end of his career, he's like, Eric, I'm a gatekeeper. Like I don't serve my patients anymore. I have to be a gatekeeper of what insurance they're using, who they could potentially see, what they're going to do. Even if I know this may be better for them, it's out of my hands at this point in time. And so it is so interesting when you think about all the, levels that exist that often make things way more complicated when if you went out to your point, you went out to the store and bought a TV that used to be $5,000, but because the competition and because innovation, you could buy that same amazing flat screen TV for $1,000 today. like that's great for me as a consumer, right? I got a better picture for cheaper dollars, and I'm super happy watching, my football game on Sunday. So it is, we see it in every other aspect of, kind of consumerism, but not in healthcare. So that's really interesting. So when you think about, where do you see specifically with Compass? How do you see Compass expanding? How do you see Compass growing over the next, 5+ years?
Yeah, I think we're going to grow. We're going to grow in multiple ways. One way is the service line itself. So at each clinic, we want to be, fully multidisciplinary, meaning we have every conservative care modality, PT, acupuncture, chiro, psych, in addition to, interventional pain. We do a lot in the realm of orthobiologics or regenerative medicine. This is a huge area of healthcare
Interesting.
that's totally underserved. I mean, we're seeing really unbelievable results with, stem cells and platelet-rich plasma and fibrous-rich plasma, fully ruptured tendons that would require massive surgeries and recovery, actually, repairing to the point of no aberrant findings on an MRI a year post. I mean, this is just the science is the anecdotal body of evidence is there and growing, and the science needs to catch up with the studies. We're actually uh, doing a formalized, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trial right now at one of our offices with intradiscal stem cell injections. So trying to be a leader there to grow that segment. And that's kind of a destination service where for a lot of people, hey, if you can avoid a surgery, like I'll travel somewhere to get that. Um, but once you kind of have each site incubated with the perfect combination of standard of care, where every person that walks through the door, you think you're doing everything you can to alleviate their pain and repair their orthopedic issue or the underlying cause of their pain, and not just treat the symptoms, then I think it's about just adding locations and maintaining
Yeah.
that standard of quality as much as we can.
Oh, Daniel, you think about, just on that note specifically. So I think you have 2 locations right now, and you want to expand beyond that. Every location you start, you're making there's costs. Obviously, there's lease and there's build out, and then you got to put people on staff before a patient walks through the door. Every entrepreneur deals with this when they deal with expansion, right? I'm a HVAC guy and I have 2 trucks on the road, and I think I have the demand for a third truck. But the third truck means I need to hire 2 more people to manage to be in that truck. So the expenses that are going to go out before I get that revenue in, how do you kind of manage that kind of thought process? Like, well, what is in your mindset to say, I'm going to put these dollars into the ground. I know it's going to be a cost, but here's what gives me confidence that is going to be a payback, when there's no guarantee in anything. And it's very risky as a small business owner, entrepreneur. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, doing a de novo practice is a terrifying, you know, it's a terrifying feat. You're just kind of jumping and saying, well, I believe that this area is underserved and it's going to value the service that we're going to provide. We're going to really hope that we get credentialed in these panels, because if we don't, we, can't see patients. We launched here in Portland, opened our doors February 1st of this year, and we're still not in network with some payers and unable to see those. And it's just, you're just kind of waiting. And so your pro formas get kind of skewed when things like that happen. You say, well, I was counting on 20 patients from this. So yeah, the de novo is really scary. One way that I've kind of pivoted to overcome that is looking at acquisitions. And so looking at very similar businesses, similar practices with people that maybe fit your culture, but the administrative side of their business hasn't been as successful. Maybe they're break even or barely break even, but there's still existing cash flow there to kind of cover expense. And then you say, hey, I think we'd make a great partnership. Why don't you join our brand? And we can bring some of our innovative technology or best practices to you, which will help reduce cost. And suddenly you're created a profitable entity that has your same culture and is delivering that same standard of care. But you didn't have to take this giant risk with cash flow because you had
Yeah,
something coming in to cover it.
that's really interesting. I'd love to talk more about that with you, because I think that's super interesting. And, as you know, at EverCommerce, we acquired 50 plus companies over the past, 8 years. So I have a lot of experience in doing that and going into new markets, utilizing platforms that already existed, and then hopefully take them to the next level and providing even more value. So that's something that I would love to follow up with you on, and give you some insights that we learned along the way. Kind of
As
really
you
to
did
close
that,
up.
I mean,
Was
acquiring
that
that many, as you acquired that many practices, was it hard to keep a cultural center?
um the answer is uh yes. But we really focused on, look, every business, here's how I would look at it. So we go acquire an organization that was, built somewhere else. My view, first and foremost, was each employee of that organization vibrationally connected with that organization, which is why they work there. So there's something in that, within that ecosystem, that was important to them. And so my view was, let's not break that. I don't want to break what is working for them. What are the things we can do that could accentuate? What are the things we do at EverCommerce that we think are a win no matter what, no matter where you are? That could be, we always did like Friday lunches, just as an example. So day one, we would implement Friday lunches with everybody. They'd be like, oh, that's cool. Like that's not a bad thing, right? And then we started getting our culture team at EverCommerce working with the local culture teams and really talking about best practices. What are the things that we're doing here that we think we can implement into your organization that will really make people feel comfortable that we're trying to accentuate, we're not trying to alleviate kind of, older cultures. And over time, with as turnover happens naturally, then we continue to hire in based on, our views of how this needs to go forward. But we're really thoughtful to not break cultures that existed because, my view with, I'm going a little off topic here, but I have this whole concept of conscious culture. And so culture is not good or bad. It's intentional. If you're conscious about it, it's intentional, right? So, who am I to say my culture is right and your culture is wrong? What I really want to say is, what are we trying to create here? What is the intention behind the culture that we're trying to create? And then create um, systems and infrastructure and events and things around it that back up and solidify that intentional consciousness that we're trying to create eventually. So that's what we really did with those acquisitions. We say, okay, great. What are you guys doing? What is your culture focused on? What are the outcomes that that culture is trying to create? I use this example all the time. The U.S. Army is an incredibly conscious culture. Now, you and I may not want to join the Army, neither good nor bad, but they are incredibly intentional on how they recruit and how basic training, how they train you, how you're out in the field, the hierarchical system to ultimately accomplish their goals. Holy shit, is that amazing, right? So incredibly conscious based on their end intentions they're trying to create. And so I always start from that perspective. What are we trying to create? What are the intentions? What do you have in place that is actually accomplishing those intentions? And what are the things we can do to kind of accentuate that going forward?
I like that. I mean, it's a great starting place to just tell someone, well, I'm not going to start with telling you what kind of culture you should build, but just say, what kind of culture are you building, or do you even think about building?
Correct.
And if you start with
Most
that
cultures are
intentionality,
unconscious. Exactly.
right,
They're not
which is
even,
kind of the worst one.
you're a rowboat in the ocean and you're flowing with it ever. And so what we've seen in the acquisitions, people are excited to be part of something. They're excited to be part of a vision. They're excited to be, they want to be a part of something that's got a culture, that's got a vision, that's got somewhere to go, that's got a mission. And if you do it in a way that embraces them and not pushes them away, let's look, this isn't, we're not perfect, we're not, going to make all the right decisions. But in general, when you go in with the right intentions, I think usually good things play themselves out. And I think that's been the case with the vast majority of our acquisitions over the years. So to really kind of close up this, I would love, you went on your own, you started this business, which you didn't know much about at first. You've now opened a second location and you have visions for beyond there. What advice would you give for, other entrepreneurs that are looking to, you know, they see an opportunity, they see, something that is not working in a specific industry they're focused on, how do you kind of advise them to disrupt something or to just do something that hasn't been done before when there's real risk involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary road to be disruptive in general. I think the biggest thing that's helped me overall, and not even necessarily from an entrepreneurial sense, but when starting my healthcare journey, just kind of as a low level manager, is don't assume that anything is the way people tell you it is. There's so many
Great advice.
entrenched, right, ideas and like I started in a lab. That was my job, was grow this laboratory, get more samples, right? It was kind of like a sales job, a little bit of operations, like a product marketing manager. And I was looking at the billing and people are like, yeah, you bill it this way. And I'm like, oh, and I never even heard of it. They're like, oh, it's a CPT code. I'm like, oh, what? I'm writing it down, CPT. Now it's my entire life, right? It's based in CPT codes. And it's like, well, why is that? Well, why is that? Why is that? And you can obviously drive yourself crazy with this, but if you kind of start pressing on things, sometimes you find you're in a call with someone who really seemed knowledgeable 5 minutes ago, and suddenly they're like, wow, that's a really good question. I never thought of that. I don't know why we do it that way. Let me get back to you. And before you know it, you found some entirely new inventive way of doing a thing that's like incredibly more profitable or efficient or better for patients or whatever it is. And I've kind of found if you press on everything like that, you find a lot more of those than you think. And I
That's really
think
cool.
instilling that curiosity in yourself and in those around you is like the precursor to innovation. And if you want to disrupt something, I think it's like find a pain point and then press on everything around the pain point, and you might find a better way to solve it.
It's really, really profound, great advice that is applicable across any industry and what anyone's doing. So that's awesome. Last question, really more for you. I'd love to know about personally what's next for you. You and I talked about you have your own podcast. We may have some boxing fans on listening to this podcast today. So I'd love to learn, share with the audience kind of what you're doing personally, and if tell them where they can find your podcast.
Yeah, appreciate the plug. Yeah, if anyone's a boxing fan, that's Boxing Podcast. Whenever I get a little free time, we get on there and try to predict some fights and lose some money on DraftKings. That's my 401k right now. If this compass doesn't work out, I've got that going for me. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm sure you've got a lot going on. I'm sure it's tough to find like balance in your life. How do you draw a line between work and anything you want to do personally?
Yeah, well, and kind of wrap this up. When you do things that you're really passionate about, those things start blending together, right? Whether I'm working, I'm working right now, Daniel, technically, but this is fun for me. Like I'm enjoying getting to know you. I'm enjoying this conversation. I'm learning and I'm better for it. So is this work or is this fun? I don't know. I hope we get to talk after this podcast, right? So, when you can do things you're really passionate about, or you do things you really enjoy, those kind of work kind of balance gets blended together, and it allows you to spend more time doing the things you really want to do, which ultimately have more impactful outcomes for your team, in your case, your patients, in my case, often our customers, because you're enjoying it. It's not heavy. It's kind of fun. And it's reality in every industry, whether it's, whether you're a plumber, you're like, well, some people love plumbing. They not love putting a new pipe on, but they may really genuinely enjoy the being strategic about how they, fix something, or just being really thoughtful around how they connect the dots to create the most efficient systems out there or solve problems that no one else has actually solved. So when you're engaged and passionate about what you do, those things kind of take care of themselves. So I appreciate that. So listen, Daniel, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today, how much I really enjoyed getting to know you and learn about your journey. And I'm excited to watch the future growth of Compass and where you take it, because you and I both know that opportunity and the need for what you're providing is absolutely huge. So how do you do it little by little, then all at once, where more people and more patients get to benefit from the value you're bringing to the communities and ultimately to the healthcare ecosystem?
That's definitely our goal. And hey, thanks for having me on. This was great. Awesome getting to know you and talking more. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I'd like to invite you to subscribe to Business Underdog on your favorite podcast platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode and you'll be the first to hear these incredible stories. Please be sure to follow us on social and visit our website at businessunderdog.com for episode updates, resources, and more. And thank you for listening today. Until next time, stay inspired, keep pushing forward, and embrace your inner underdog.